Number 1.
I used to live in a trailer park with a roommate. The neighborhood never felt particularly safe. Sketchy neighbors, flimsy locks, and absolutely no streetlights. But the rent was cheap, so we made the best of it. There were 2 keys, naturally, but as my roommate didn't have a car, thus no key ring, and was chronically forgetful, we figured the easiest thing to do was to keep the spare key under an ashtray on the porch. I know, we were very stupid girls. Thankfully, this is one of those lesson learned kind of stories. I usually got home around 9 p.m. and she worked at night, so I more often than not came home to an empty house. On this night, I had stopped by the store on the way home. So I'm walking up the steps to the porch, both arms full of groceries, and fumbling for my keys. Keep in mind, it's pitch dark outside. Even our porch light didn't work. I found my house key and blindly aim it for the lock, and something's wrong with the knob. I feel it and realize the spare key is sticking out of the lock, and the door is open. My blood runs cold, and for a few seconds I'm not sure what to do. I tell myself that my ditzy roommate probably just forgot to take the key out and stick my hand inside to switch on the lights. I take 3 slow steps into the trailer, eyes darting around for anything unusual. Everything is exactly as I left it. Just as I'm starting to calm down, I hear this low whistle from behind me. The kind of whistle a person makes when they're amazed or impressed by something. I have no idea where it came from, but it's so clear in my memory, it may as well have been right in my ear. That's when the "what do I do" fear turned to straight up run mode. In what felt like one motion, I dropped all the groceries on the floor, ran outside, and slammed the door behind me. I dove into my car, and I was shaking so badly I had trouble getting the key in the ignition. I kept my eyes on the trailer the whole time. To this day, I'm not absolutely sure, but I think I saw a shadow moving in the kitchen. I tore out of the park and called my roommate. When she answered, I asked as calmly as possible if she had used the key today. When she said no, I started crying and told her what happened. I was absolutely hysterical by the time I got to where she worked. I called 911 and described as best I could what happened without losing it again. When we arrived back at the trailer, there were 4 squad cars in our driveway, and all the lights were on inside. Officers looked all through the trailer and didn't see any sign of anyone, and nothing had been taken. I told the story again, and despite the smirks on the other cops' faces, the officer I was speaking to could see how shaken I was, and he was very kind and understanding. He assured me that I did the right thing and told me not to hesitate to call if we noticed anything strange. I was in pieces for the rest of the night. I spent the night at my parents', in my mother's bed no less, and just cried and shook for hours, trying to fall asleep. I think the worst part about it was how hysterical I was versus everyone else's calm. I felt stupid for getting so worked up over what evidently turned out to be nothing, but I couldn't stop thinking about that shadow in the kitchen and that whistle. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was waiting for me to come home. Obviously, we never left the key outside again, and I never really felt safe again until the day I finally moved out.
Number 2.
To give some background information, this event occurred a little over a year ago, and I still haven't been able to even begin to get over it. I'm a 22-year-old 5'4" female, and at the time I was 21. My family and I had recently moved to a new town that was a fair amount more rural than the town I had previously lived in, and our new house was a large ranch-style house with a basement. I was home from college, and my parents had left for the week to celebrate their wedding anniversary with their friends who lived several hours away. Before I continue, I'll give you a quick layout of the house so that you'll be able to imagine the setting a bit more clearly. There were 3 doors which led into the house, one on the front porch, a sliding glass door on the back porch, and another door on the other side of the wall from my bedroom which led into the garage and basement. When you walk out of my bedroom and turn, you can see all the way across the house, kitchen, living room, dining area, to the door of my parents' bedroom and the stairs leading up from the basement. It had been a few days since my parents left, and I hadn't had any problems. They had sent me a couple messages on Facebook letting me know that they arrived at their friend's house safely and were having a good time. The day had gone well, and I was sure to check that I'd locked all the doors of the house once the sun started to go down. It was about 11 p.m., and I was doing my nightly routine of laying in bed and messing around on the computer when I suddenly got this sinking feeling of dread. I felt as if I was being watched. It was summer, and we didn't have AC, so I had a large box fan in the window blowing the cool night air into my stifling hot room. But once that feeling settled over me, I decided that I should remove the fan and close the window, just in case. Once removing the fan, shutting and locking the window, and pulling down the curtain, I felt a bit better. However, I still couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I lay back in bed and tried to continue what I was doing, though I didn't put my headphones back on. After a few minutes, I began to hear something that sounded like light scratching. I sat still in bed, listening to the sound, trying to pinpoint what it was and if I recognized it at all. Our new house, although relatively close in distance to our neighbors, had a fair amount of forest around it, so I thought the scratching may have been an animal or someone's dog that got loose and wanted to come inside. After a few minutes, the scratching stopped, and everything returned to silence. So I figured that I was probably right, and that it must have been an animal. My relief was short-lived. As soon after the scratching stopped, from the other side of the wall, I began to hear slow footsteps descending into the basement. This is when I knew I was completely screwed. There was no way I could get out of the house without walking past the basement stairs. We didn't have a house phone, and at the time, I was in the process of getting a new cell phone because mine was broken beyond repair. I sat there for a few seconds, wondering what I should do. I knew that I would need to get out of the house as soon as possible, and that the more time I wasted, the worse it would be for me. I contemplated popping the screen out of my bedroom window and jumping out, but it was far enough off the ground that there was a good chance I would end up getting hurt if I did. Not to mention that if I jumped out the window and hurt myself, I wouldn't be able to run for help, and I would be right next to the door where whoever was in my house had gone in through. So I decided to be very careful and quietly open my door and peek out around the corner, and if the coast was clear, I would make a mad dash for the front door and sprint to my neighbor's house. I very slowly opened my bedroom door, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness of the house before creeping around the corner and looking to see if I was safe to make a run for it. What I saw nearly made me vomit. As my eyes scanned the house, I noticed that something was off. I squinted hard as I looked over at the basement stairs and was able to make out the shape of a man. What made it worse? He wasn't just standing at the top of the stairs. He was crawling up them like some kind of nightmare creature. I quickly backed into my room again, shutting and locking the door as quietly as I could. I didn't think he'd seen me, but there was no way that I was going to make a run for it now. My only choice was to pop the screen and jump out the window. As I was unlocking and opening my window, I heard the handle of my bedroom door turn. Once the man realized that it was locked, in a sickeningly sweet, sing-song voice, he cooed,
"I know you're in there."
This was followed by a loud cackle, and what I can only imagine was him throwing himself at full force against my door. I ripped the screen out of the window and flung myself out. I landed wrong on my right foot, and I was sure that I'd hurt my ankle, but at the time I couldn't think of anything other than getting as far away as possible. I got up and ran as fast as I could to my neighbor's house, knocking on their door in a panicked frenzy and ringing the bell over and over. I looked over at my house as I was yelling for my neighbors to let me in, and I swear to God I could see the man standing at my window, waving at me. My neighbors finally opened the door after what felt like forever, and I managed to explain well enough what was going on for them to let me in and call the police. I stayed with them until the police arrived. The police searched my house and found that the lock to the basement had been picked and that the door to my bedroom was hanging off the hinges. They weren't able to find the man anywhere, and because I had only seen him for a split second in the dark, I couldn't provide them with a good description of him. Of course, I got into contact with my parents immediately, and they hurried home. The police took my statement and searched the area for the man, but of course, they came up with nothing. After this event, my parents and I were sure to add deadbolt locks to the door leading into the basement and to the door leading out of the basement to the rest of the house. They also helped me pay for a new phone. What really bothers me about all of this is that nothing was stolen. There wasn't even any evidence that the guy had looked through anything while he'd been in my house. CreepyMina here of the WorstNightmare channel. I hope you enjoyed those 2 stories of women encountering break-ins. I wanted to point out a couple of things to everyone. I want to make a note that I do upload every Saturday. I think some people have not been aware of that. I upload videos every Saturday, and by midnight Eastern Standard Time, and I'm in the United States, so depending on where you live, that gives you an idea of when the videos are coming up. Now, if you go to my channel page and you look at the subscription number, there's a wheel right next to that number. If you click on that, a box will come up and it says, "Send me all notifications for this channel." If you click that and hit save, you'll get an email every time that I do upload a video. And please share this video on your favorite social networking platform. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter as WorstNightmare6. Send your stories to CreepyMina@gmail.com. And please do remember to stay safe.